right, hey Anna, how's it going? I'm going to give you some feedback on your aims here as if I was your PhD advisor and you were my student. And this was a grant you were going to write for your dissertation or something, and it would really help you in your life. It would be good for your career. It would be good for both of us. We'd both be famous because you'd publish papers on this, and you would do all the work, but I'd be the senior author. So I want you to get this grant. You want to get this grant. I'm going to give you feedback to make it as strong as possible at this point. Granted, that's all pretend, but that's the style my mind is in. So I wrote a few little scribbles on your thing here. You can come check those out at some point if you want. I think overall you have a strong proposal, a good idea. The notion of oxytocin, the notion of emotional recognition and borderline personality disorder. Those are good things to potentially combine. I think overall, like the main thing I would say in terms of your feedback is if you can tighten up your argument. So you're kind of like, you make this argument and you're like, yeah, this is going to show us something. And I'm reading it and I'm like, is it really going to show us that? Or might there be other, like say you do your study, you get some results, and you're like, yeah, here's the results. They're what I thought they would be. And I'm going to be like, yeah, I think there might be some other explanations for those results besides what you're saying the only two explanations are, like something to do with the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, or something to do with the amygdala, I think. I think you need to tighten up that argument. Or if your argument is strong as it stands, then you need to walk me through that better. Show me the evidence that your explanations are the only explanations or whatever for the potential future results. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If not, you can reach out to me. And then I guess I'll just go through some little specific things now. Your last sentence in your first paragraph doesn't really work. You clearly borrowed that directly from my PD proposal, where I was talking about how like there's a bunch of old people running around now, and because of that we need to improve the quality of life of a good chunk of these old people who have Parkinson's. You're saying, therefore, we need to identify factors that function people with borderline from functioning optimally. I don't know, it just doesn't really work for me. I just rephrase that. Make it sound more connected to the paragraph preceding it. Next sentence, you need a reference if you're going to say that. You can't just say that, you need a reference, or several references maybe. Oxytocin, blah, blah, blah. Last paragraph in that sentence where you talk about in the nucleus that facilitates, or you just say in the nucleus and facilitates. What nucleus? There are many nuclei in the brain. You should specify which one you're talking about. I'm imagining you saw that in a paper or something, and it probably specifies which nucleus. Incidentally, if you don't know, a nucleus is just a place in the brain where a bunch of ends of neurons are, where there's a lot of synapses connecting and like firing and talking to each other and stuff. And that's what gray matter essentially is in your brain, is a nucleus, a place where there's a bunch of synapses kind of all clustered together from different neurons in different places in the brain. On the other hand, white matter consists of tracks, which are just bundles of axons. So that's pretty much all you got, is these axon tracks, white matter and gray matter, which is essentially the nuclei. So which nucleus you're talking about should be specified. Yeah, that third paragraph, I wrote in the margins, can you have some tighter logic there, please? You say another possibility is that those with BPD have trouble regulating oxytocin with their hypothalamus and posterior pituitary gland. Meh, okay. I think you got to give me a better story for that. If you really think that's why people with BPD have trouble with faces, then spell that argument out for me better. Talk about why oxytocin is necessary to recognize faces. And by the way, this result you talk about they in the first paragraph, people with BPD have a tendency to attribute negative emotions to neutral expressions. Okay. So are they actually less sensitive at seeing faces, or do they just have this bias? See, that's different. What if you show them, what if you say, okay, listen, I'm going to show you a face, and you tell me if it's neutral or afraid. I guess they would be biased to say it's afraid more often than a regular person. But that's a bias. That doesn't mean they're less sensitive or more sensitive. So, yeah, I don't know. Just be more, I don't know. You can think about that. Specific aim 1 to examine the functional, not function, and neural mechanisms underlying the deficit. I would probably just rephrase that because you're not really examining the neural mechanisms there. You're giving people oxytocin, and that affects a lot of things in their brain. You don't know which neural mechanism you're really affecting when you give them oxytocin. So, yeah. I would just say to examine the effect of oxytocin upon performance in BPD. That's your aim. That's your first aim. If intranasal oxytocin increases the ability in those with BPD to recognize negative emotions, which I'm not sure why it would. Can you give me some help in the background to anticipate that? So you think giving people oxytocin is going to help them recognize negative emotions? Did you see a study that happened in the past in like regular people or something, or in people with BPD? So spell that out for me so I can understand that hypothesis, anticipate that hypothesis. And then the last thing I'll give you, I guess, is in terms of feedback is I didn't quite understand the difference between the two aims. So in the first one, you're giving them oxytocin and you're seeing if they do better recognizing faces, I think. And then the second aim, you seem to be doing the same thing. So what's the difference between these two aims? Maybe I should be able to tell, but I can't tell. So try to make that a little clearer if there is a difference between the first two aims, or is it? It seems almost to me like you're doing the same thing, but then you're drawing two separate conclusions from it, and you're calling those your two aims. Your aim should be two different things that you do, two different experiments, or an experiment, and then I do that experiment with oxytocin separately. That would be two aims, something like that. All right, that's probably plenty of feedback for you. So yeah, do your best to apply that. Keep up the good work. You're on a good track, and let me know if you want to talk about it.